Hello, are we live? Yes, we are. No one can answer. Hey, it's John Sloss. I am from Cinetic Media, and we are hosting a virtual roundtable. It is our second, and I guess the first went well enough that we're doing another one, and now it's a tradition. We have a pretty remarkable group of people with us tonight. We have a theme of film festivals, and I don't know that we could have done any better. So let me first introduce the resplendent Tabitha Jackson, the director of the new director of the Sundance Film Festival.
Hello, John.
Hello, Tabitha. A second from Shelter Island, the new director of the New York Film Festival, someone I've known for what, 25 years maybe? Pretty close to Eugene Hernandez. And from across the world, in the middle of the night, our old friend Carlo Chatrian, who is the program director of the Berlin International Film Festival. Carlo, it's 1 a.m. there. Thank you for staying up. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I thought you were going to wear your pajamas, but if those are your pajamas, we should talk. So since this is our second time, we have certain traditions, and one of them is you got to start with a joke. So I'm going to start with a joke. It is a lawyer joke, and since I am also a lawyer, I feel I can tell it. It's my favorite lawyer joke. So a man calls his lawyer and says, "Hi, I'd like to speak with my lawyer." The secretary says, "I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but your lawyer died in a fiery crash." And the guy says, "Oh, okay, thank you." A week later, he calls and says, "Hi, I'd like to speak with my lawyer." The woman says, you called last week and I told you your lawyer died." He goes, "Okay, thank you." He calls a third week and says, "Hi, I'd like to speak with my lawyer." She goes, "You've called each of the last 2 weeks. Both times I told you your lawyer died. What part of that statement don't you understand?" And he said, "Oh, I understand. I just like hearing it." All right, okay. And as a bonus, I've got a little joke, but I have to tell it because I love it. So, and I know these are morbid. There is a widow at a funeral, and a man comes up to her and leans over and says, "El mundo." And the woman says, "Thank you. That would have meant the world to him."
Okay, I can now take my glasses off because I was only wearing them in case your joke was rubbish. So now I genuinely
it's a respectable joke, right? That joke is courtesy of Jeff Rosen, for those of you who know him. And I'm going to tell a joke every one of these, so you should feel free to submit them.
Hopefully people won't leave, John. Hopefully they're staying. They're staying for more.
Like flies.
Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Stick it out.
Yes. Yeah, I ended last one with the Ed Wood quote, "My next film will be better." So I always have that in mind. All right, so our other tradition is to introduce each of you by giving you a minute to sort of talk about your professional history. And I'd like you to tag onto that a statement of something you have learned to cook in quarantine that you didn't cook before, and maybe a tip for our audience. So Tabitha, if you could give us a minute of your personal history, since you may be new to a lot of people here.
Yes, I'm new even to myself in this role. So I'm craving your indulgence for this next hour, and also just a little warning, as well as my own precarity, the internet is a bit in and out. So if I disappear, I'll come back as soon as I can. My career, after a failed career at being a white nationalist, I went into public broadcasting in the UK, worked for the BBC, for Channel 4 and for Film 4, which is where I fell in love with independent feature documentaries. I came to the US to seek my fortune. I'm still looking for that fortune, but instead found the riches of Sundance Institute, where I was the director of the documentary film program for the last 6, nearly 7 years. And recently, after winning a bet with John Cooper, I became the director of the Sundance Film Festival, and he left stage right, pursued by dancing boys. And I inherited a global pandemic and the prospect of a mass gathering in flu season in Utah. So thank you, Cooper, and thanks for John for having me.
And are you cooking anything new?
Yes, I don't cook, but I eat, and I just learned, it's so ridiculous, how to make fresh pesto, which is basically just bashing loads of basil leaves and pine nuts together, and then it's delicious.
Yeah.
And then I made gnocchi. So I've expanded my repertoire by 200%.
It's really good for aggression and anxiety too.
I don't suffer from that, John. That's your syndrome.
Thank you. And in terms of your fortune, I'm sure when the kickbacks start coming in, you'll do just fine. Okay, Carlo, on to you. A little personal history and a quarantine cooking tip.
So I am Italian, and I grew up in a very small village where I am right now. So cinema was something that I was very far away from me. Then I had the chance to meet with some people at university. I studied cinema, but it was not that exciting. And then was really the encounters with other friends that brought me to a film festival that make me fall in love with cinema. So I start going to film festivals as a film critic. Then I start having the desire to share these films with other people. So I find a way to show these films here and there in Italy. And that's how it started. So I was a programmer for some festival, and then I was asked, to my big surprise, to run Locarno Film Festival, which is a festival in the south of Switzerland with an amazing open air venue called Piazza Grande, the main square. And I stayed there for some years, 7 years, and I just end up my first edition at Berlin as artistic director. That was a big change for me, from a small village to a big town. From Italian-speaking Switzerland, but Locarno is an Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, to German. I'm still coping with my German, and but I enjoyed very much, and I'm here. Cook. I like cooking. During the quarantine, I had I lived all the quarantine in Italy with my family. And so the cook was more on my daughters and son side. They really engaged themselves in that. What I learned, it might sound surprising for an Italian, I learned how to do pizza. So the pasta and of the pizza. And the secret is to do it in the morning and let it grow slowly. If it's hot, it's even better. So on every Saturday, we have this rule of in the morning, we make the pasta for the pizza. And then at night, we have this normal margherita pizza.
That might be the most valuable thing to come out of this entire discussion. So thank you.
Okay.
Eugene, tell us a little about yourself.
I will. And by the way, Tabitha Cooper in the chat says you're welcome. So he's...
Thanks, Cooper. Supportive as always.
Yes. I'm terrified. Cooper's
Hi, everyone. You know, I'm out here on Shelter Island, which has been just a really nice place to be, very homey and comfortable place to be for the past 8 or 9 weeks with a couple of good friends. My whole career started at film festivals, and you know, I think like I grew up in a small town. Also, Carlo, I grew up in a small town in California, Indio, California, near Palm Springs in the desert. But after UCLA, I was working in television, and this was in the early 90s, and I was really frankly very inspired by everything that was happening at the Sundance Film Festival in that era. And so I grabbed a friend and we went to Sundance in '93, for just to try to figure out what that was all about. The people I met there are the people that I started IndieWire with in the mid 90s. When I moved to New York in the mid 90s, I started going to the New York Film Festival. And so it's really these two film festivals, Sundance and the New York Film Festival, that have shaped me. I mean, I really wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't know what I know, who I know. I wouldn't have the appreciation for movies that I have developed if it were not for these two specific festivals. So, you know, someone like Cooper has had a tremendous influence on me. Someone like Richard Pena has had a tremendous influence on me. And this is my, you know, this has been my graduate film school. So, you know, I'm deeply moved and honored to be in the role that I am now, to be able to give something back to a place that has given me a whole career, really.
And are you cooking?
I am. I like to cook. I'm always carrying some of my grandmother's recipes for Mexican food, but and I do cook out here. I'm out here with a couple of friends, Ann Hubble, you may know from Kodak, a producer, and then my good friend Brian Brooks from IndieWire, IndieWire days. I am cooking every day, but actually the thing that I've found to be most nourishing the past few weeks, frankly, is and you know, I'm in Long Island, which is the bread box of New York. I mean, it's just a wonderful place for gardens and farm stands. So I've really been enjoying smoothies. I'm a big fan of different fruits and vegetables. And so I'm like probably most of you, I'm sitting on Zoom and meetings all day, and I barely have time to like cook lunch. I can make dinner, but during the day it's really hard. So I just have time to throw some fruits and vegetables together into a blender and make a smoothie for lunch. So so yeah, that's been a big go-to for me, is fruit smoothies with fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, same here. You know, not everybody knows that you started IndieWire.
It was a long time ago. That's how you and I first met in the 90s. And you know, I see some of my IndieWire colleagues are posting comments. I'm thankfully I can't read them very well, or else it might be disconcerting. Yeah, I was there for a long time, and I've been at Lincoln Center about a decade now. But yeah, that feels like another life ago, frankly. The mid 90s and the independent scene of the mid 90s feels like a whole different world.
Do you approve of IndieWire as we find it today?
Of course I do. You know, I handed the baton to Dana Harris and to Eric Cohn and to Ann Thompson, and to my good friend James Israel, who are all still there and leading it into new directions and doing some amazing work.
Thank you. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. You know, there's a chat that goes along the bottom here. You should feel free to chime in. And the second half of this, I'm going to ask questions that come from folks. So you should also chime in with your questions. And also this roundtable is going to live on YouTube. So at the Synetic Media channel. So you should feel free to watch it again and again and again, as I know you will. A little bit of seriousness here. You know, we are all sort of feeling the pain of the festivals that didn't get to come off this spring, and the filmmakers who were counting on playing in the festivals and didn't get an opportunity here. And obviously, a lot of very smart people who don't have a lot of answers are working hard to figure out how to sort of bring festivals back as quickly as possible. And I guess there's a set of other really smart people working on a vaccine for a pandemic, but I don't know much about that. So I'm going to go back to you, Eugene, to start this out because your festival is first among these three. And I'll take a leaf from our friend Carlo, who was in Locarno and has the most amazing open air screening facility I've ever seen. We were there with Blaze a few years ago, and it was as Ethan Hawke said, it was one of the greatest nights of his life. So I know you're in conversations. Obviously, you want the festival to come off. You have a beautiful plaza there at Lincoln Center. Are you guys talking about open air screenings?
Absolutely. You know, Carlo is the person who introduced me to the Piazza Grande and Locarno. It's a stunning venue, and Carlo, you did such an amazing job with that festival and that venue. if we can come up with something even, you know, a fraction as beautiful and as amazing a place to watch a movie as the Piazza Grande in Locarno, that will be a huge, we will feel like we have a huge success. I mean, look, the thing is with us right now, John, is that well, it's two things. To your point, you know, our city is still struggling. There's still a crisis that is affecting a lot of people in New York, and affecting people that I work with, and half our staff is furloughed right now. But with all, you know, if everything goes according to plan, we're going to have a festival in New York this fall. It will exist in a few different ways. Hopefully in our theaters, to the extent that we're allowed, carefully, in a virtual capacity in some way. And we've been working with, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but we've been working with a bunch of folks and colleagues out in the world at festivals about what we can do on the virtual side. And then we haven't talked too much about it yet because it's still very much in the works, but outdoor and open air will be another new component of this year's New York Film Festival. We're still working out a lot of logistics, and, you know, again, to the extent that it's safe and we can do it in a way that doesn't hurt anybody, that's what we plan to do.
And for the record, I would counsel Tabitha and Carlo against open air screenings at their festival.
Don't recommend it.
Yeah, we will get back to the whole hybrid issue of virtual and live. Tabitha, I'm going to go to you next. You have a big new job. I've known you for years, and you worked. You come out of documentaries brilliantly, I might add. I also was curious about, is that a Brooklyn accent you have?
Yes, it is, John. Absolutely, absolutely correct, old chap.
Some
Brooklyn.
people may have trouble understanding it, so please try to overcompensate. So I guess I know what your biggest concern is, because it's everybody's biggest concern, but I'll flip that and say, what are you most looking forward to in your first year as a director of Sundance?
I think it is, you know, inheriting this sounds like corporate speak, but it isn't, just inheriting that mission of facilitating the expression of independent voices through cinema. And that moment, that extraordinary moment when the work first meets the world. I mean, it's been incredible to witness that from the sidelines, as it were, but being given this opportunity. There's a great Wim Wenders quote about something like the most political choice you can make is where to direct people's eyes. So that sense of having this incredible cultural tool, as well as a gathering full of fun and beauty and energy and the sharing of ideas, but to meet this moment, thinking that perhaps there is something that we can do as a cultural organization, that gathering of extraordinary artists and audiences, to maybe help us think a different thought about the future or the present we want. That excites me a lot, and is also a huge responsibility.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've got a lot of company in saying that Sundance has evolved into a unique event in the world of cinema. And, you know, this is obviously a trying time, but it's, I know everyone involved with Sundance is dedicated to keeping, you know, the significance that it has.
Yes.
And
so it's almost, that's lovely of you to say that, and Cooper and the incredible team that I now work with, led by Kim Yatani, should take credit for that. But in a way, this moment, when one carefully puts aside the tragedy and hardship that it is bringing, also allows us to think about what is the essence of what we do in any of our festivals. What's the essence of what we do? What's the purpose of what we do? And in a sense, it doesn't matter how that is expressed. If you can locate it and hold on to it, then if it's a tiny thing and that purpose is still there, it will still be felt. So Sundance, the festival, isn't its expression in terms of the size of it and the craziness of it. Utah is a key component of that, and that makes the planning difficult. you know, the Utah in January in flu season. What are the realities of that? And trying to plan this far out, where every week feels like a year in terms of the changes that are happening. It's a moment, but everyone's willingness to succeed. And the only thing I think we can fail at is not taking the moment to be ambitious and finding our values. So
yeah, no, and to be thoughtful and smart and understand that this is going to be an incremental process.
yeah, I might fail on the smart bit, but I'll be really thoughtful, I promise.
Excellent. Carlo, so how's your German?
It's improving, but still I need to express myself in English, which I think it's better also for you guys, because my German is not as good as it should be. But
do you see yourself eventually taking the mic up on that stage at the Grand Palais and introducing films in German eventually?
if it's about saying hello and introducing just the names, that's something I can do it. But I'm lucky because I've been told that in Berlin people don't like the moderator or the presenter to say much. So I'm lucky in that respect. Yeah.
That's funny because I don't think Dieter ever got that memo.
We have a different personality, and I think we have different backgrounds. So he preferred to stay on the red carpet. I do stay on the red carpet, but I also like to be on stage. For me, it's important because it's like hosting. So I like to put my face in front of the audience because choosing a film, it's something important, and we have to stand by the filmmakers, we have to stand by the producer. At least that's the way I see things.
So many people over here watching and who will watch are sort of seeing you and being exposed to you for the first time. Is there, if you had to talk about how you think your influence might change the Berlin Film Festival from what it has been, or how you would characterize it going forward, what would you say?
That's for me, I don't know, that's the wrong question. Maybe it's more how the Berlin Film Festival will influence me. I don't know. I don't think in those terms. I don't think festival directors should put themselves in front of the film or behind the film. It's the other way around. It's first the films come first, and then of course we choose the film according to our taste, to the group of people we work with, also to something that is very unpredictable, the mood. It's a number of things, and in the end, what I really like is because people thinks that making a film festival is just choosing film like picking cherries, but it's more like creating a narrative, and this is the things that I like very much. To try to give maybe more than one vision of the world through the films. So I don't have an answer for your question. I hope I won't put my mark too much. It would be wrong.
You'll let the film speak. Do you see a place for big Hollywood films in the festival?
You know, I love cinema in all films, in all their forms. I love, when I was in Locarno, I show blockbuster and very obscure films. This is I think in Sundance the same, and New York Film Festival I've been only once as the same. I mean, depending on what we are thinking about of blockbuster. But yes, for me, it's, festival is also gathering point, but also one of the rare moments where you can gather different audiences. And if you succeed in bringing the same venue, in the same theater, people that are used to consider cinema only blockbuster or only art house film, I think you made something big, because it helps the community, it helps ourselves. So yes, I would love to. Then there are, as you know, there are a number of question, because there is the market, there is also the results of showing a film or not showing a film. But the last edition we had Onward by Pixar. I was very happy to have this one along with I don't know. Yeah, the Iranian film who won the Golden Bear. I think this is the diversity that we like.
So if the Academy Awards move to April, as is rumored, do you see that? I guess I would put this to Tabitha and Carlo. Do you see that having an effect on your programming for the festival this year?
It will mean that half the industry doesn't leave halfway through to go and do the campaigning lunches and so on. So that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm actually interested in, again, being the newbie. I mean, our curatorial choices will remain similar and true to our values, and our values are the independent voice, not so much the Hollywood blockbuster, but about those independent voices trying to get out. But our submissions just opened on Monday, and I wonder, I can't tell whether it's going to be feast or famine this year, depending what happens with the fall festivals, and what to expect. So I'm interested in what effect that might have on the programming, simply what we are offered this year when production has stopped. But there are still many films being made, and whether we'll see a preponderance of non-fiction films. So it's less for me about where the Oscars is. We're in a different groove to that, but I am interested in what happens with our submissions.
And how about you, Carlo? If you find yourself smack in the middle of the campaign season for awards this year, is that going to change your approach toward programming?
I don't know. I don't think so. But this year is so unpredictable that it's really hard to say. As Tabitha said, we don't know how many films will be ready for our festival. Personally, I don't know exactly which form we will be able to put in place in Berlin. Berlin is a huge town, and of course, and we rely a lot also on the local audience. And if we have to put in place strong or harsh restriction measures, then it's going to be a different festival. So I prefer to go step by step. For us, it's quite early, so we haven't started yet the work of selection. I've been watching some films, yes, but we haven't started. I don't know. I haven't thought about that, honestly, John. Maybe we can talk more in the fall about that.
Fair enough. Okay, so this is a question I'll throw open to all of you, and this is sort of what everyone is thinking about. Tom Powers wrote a piece that I thought was interesting. I'll leave it at that. About it, and it's the question of sort of how film festivals are going to proceed. Is there a consensus forming around a sort of hybrid live presentation, virtual presentation, limited virtual presentation that festivals are starting to coalesce around, while this pandemic exists? Any thoughts?
I wanted to say I'm intrigued by what you mean by your response to Tom's article, John. I was very glad to read it. There obviously people are trying to figure out what is right for the filmmakers and for the work, and that must remain paramount. And there had been a kind of a gathering of momentum that people shouldn't be putting their films online because it disrupts the existing commercial model. I want to do whatever is best for the films and the filmmakers, but I do think that we can be imaginative. Firstly, I think we can be imaginative about what we want to emerge into. And is the existing model the model that we think is equitable and fair and works, or does it just work for some people? So it's not necessarily a bad thing to take this opportunity to try a different model. The second thing is, in terms of accessibility and reach, and if you want your film to reach as many people as possible, people who are not able to come to a very expensive gathering on a mountain, then you might see the opportunity of a virtual festival to be absolutely what you want for your work. I don't know how the money works. It doesn't seem to me that it's evident that that would destroy the financial model, but it would increase what we see as the value of film, which is this culturally enriching, meaning-making, beautiful thing. So to restrict it to only live festivals, particularly in the moment of a global pandemic, just seems like we shouldn't reach that conclusion too quickly. So I love the fact that Tom's article rebalanced the debate, and now we can go forward with kind of both sides and try and come to the right conclusion.
I mean, I think it's a shared goal of everyone, whether you're on the selling side or you're on the programming side, is that as many eyeballs as possible see these films. I guess the question is, what is, the most effective way to do that? But in terms of the actual festival itself, I assume, Carlo and Eugene, you guys are having conversations about potential hybrid live screenings in a safe way with coincident virtual programming. Are these conversations that are occurring in your realm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I had a conversation about it recently. So yes, in that regard, but also, I'm not giving anything away. I've been talking to other heads of other festivals as well, festivals in the fall, festivals that are coming up next year, about what the right next steps are for a virtual experience at an IRL film festival. I really think a lot about something that Tabitha was just saying, and that is that, of course, our first priority is to bring people together in any way we can around movies in a grand cinematic experience. For us at the New York Film Festival, it's being in Alice Tully Hall. This year, it'll be an outdoor experience in addition to the other ones. But I also think a lot about people who don't have access to those experiences and to those films. And to me, that's a driving aspect of considering how to bring this virtual, whatever experience that means, but whatever virtual means in that context, to bring that experience to audiences that might not have access to, whether it's because it's really expensive to go to festivals, to attend festivals, to travel to festivals. I happen to be someone who took a risk on making that investment in my 20s and saved a lot of money and traveled to Sundance, and it transformed me. But what about people that can't do that? And what about people that would never have that opportunity to connect with films and filmmakers? And if we have to enable that virtually alongside the live experience, to me, that's only going to be a win. But we have to figure it out, and how it works. This is what you and I talked about, John. We have to figure out what's the combination, what's that cocktail of that makes sense. I mean, you could speak to it. You can speak to how you're thinking about it. I think it would be really interesting for all of us to talk about that too. But we don't know the answer. We're on the first wave of this right now. We're going to experiment.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a cocktail, and if we can find a way for people to share a live screening experience, whether it's programming fewer films, whether it's showing them in more theaters simultaneously, and then allowing, and I think Tom touches on this in his article, the people who would have otherwise filled those other seats to have access to watch it virtually, to create the conversation and the community that would have occurred had the festival taken place in a normal setting, is something a lot of people are thinking about, and hopefully we'll find a way. Hopefully we'll find a vaccine before all of this becomes relevant, but hopefully we'll find a way to optimize this with that combination of things. Yeah. Carlo, is this a conversation you guys are having in Berlin yet, or?
Yeah, I think that, in Europe, the film festivals are really a different system from the US, mainly because they are heavily financed by a public fund, and the same fund they finance also all the chain, so the production and the distribution and the theaters. So on the one hand, I think it's good. On the other hand, we have less freedom in doing whatever we want, because we are part of a chain, and the money we received, they have to serve the purpose of keeping the chain. but we are having this discussion, of course, because Berlin is a very popular film festival. Last edition, we sold 330,000 tickets, and we know that the next year most likely won't be able to offer this to the same number of audience, and we would like to do so. So we are having discussion with on different level. Also something that for me it's very crucial nowadays is the life of theaters in Europe, in Germany especially. Many theaters they probably won't be able to open again. And I think that with a festival like Berlin lives also out of the different theater, the big one, but also the very small one in the outskirts of town. This is the richness of the festival. So this is another element that we would like to, in some way, to support it. We are still in a very early stage of discussion, though. So.
Okay, this next topic, this is a particular bugaboo of mine, and Carlo, you and I have talked about it repeatedly, and I guess this is really for Tabitha and Carlo, and that is the notion of films playing Sundance and playing in competition at Berlin. Eliza Hittman was an example this year of a film that played very successfully at Sundance and won an award in Berlin. I've said for a long time that there isn't a ton of foreign press in Sundance, so the notion of a European premiere in Berlin can be virtually as effective as a world premiere in Berlin, and it would be great for filmmakers to know that they could count on those two festivals so close together to sort of highlight their films in different parts of the world. And I guess I would say in this moment where we're all hurting so much and films are hurting, is this an opportunity for maybe Sundance and Berlin to really coordinate more, to shine a light on those films with greater frequency than they have? I think Eliza might have been unique. I mean, since Sundance comes first, I guess this is really a question for you, Carlo. Are you more open to the idea of films coming from Sundance and having a European premiere instead of a world premiere?
Yeah, when I was appointed, along with Mariette Rissenbeck, we had a conversation very early on with Cooper and Kim, and we said since the beginning again that films can come first. So as long as we are sure that the combo Sundance and Berlin work, we are open to do it. I said it and then I did it. I mean, I selected Eliza Hittman, but also Kelly Reichardt was screened even in Telluride. If the film is good, if it's new, if market-wise we can offer something, I'm totally open to do it. At the same time, I cannot have half of the competition with film premiered in Sundance because this will disrupt the market in Berlin. But Berlinale has many sections. We had, I think, good combination with Panorama, and I'm sure we will discuss with Tabitha about that. I'm not that picky and say either you have to come to Berlin or to come to Sundance. Sometimes it makes sense to come only to Berlin because I don't know, the production or the distribution have different issue. But for me, my position didn't change from the last time we talked, even though some German press, they criticized, they said that it's not good for Berlinale. I don't believe that. I don't believe this is more things that are related to the 20th century, these ego things. Is not on the 21st century to me.
I mean, I've always felt that the emphasis on world premieres over the emphasis on the quality of the programming is problematic. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of pressure from local authorities, from the press, to have world premieres. So it's an ongoing question.
I think it's an interesting one. I was in a conversation the other day talking about premieres and what they, how they impact artists, but also that sense that one thing that premieres, the insistence on premieres does do is to in some way ensure that there is a diversity of films at these festivals. instead of a kind of traveling circuit of the anointed films, that there is some value to making sure that there is discovery in one's own festival. But it's definitely an active conversation wherever I go, particularly in this moment, is about premiere policies. So it's interesting.
Here's something I've been thinking about. Do you guys think that when we pull out of this current situation, this pandemic, and hopefully things can return to some semblance of normalcy, do you think that the virtual component that we're talking about here at festivals is going to survive and become a normal part of festival programming to a greater extent going forward?
I think it should. I think it's something that, you know, connected to what I was saying earlier, I think it enables us to connect with new audiences that might not otherwise have a way into a festival. I think we have to find the right combination of live and virtual, and in our case, outdoor, to figure out what makes the most sense. But we've already been experimenting, not so much with putting films online during our festival, but talks and you know, conversations, master classes, and we see millions of minutes of content viewed around the world. And with Sundance, I know it's been a huge way to reach new audiences with the amazing conversations you see happening at that festival. So I think that's the foundation, John. I think you build it from there, and I think there's a way to make it a part of the overall experience.
I agree with that, Eugene. Do you not want to see that, John Sloss?
What do I matter? I am in the commerce end of this business. It's interesting because one of these festivals has a official market attached to it. That's Berlin. One of these festivals is, to me, the biggest market in the world, but it's never acknowledged that, and that is Sundance. And one of these festivals is a festival of festivals. And that, at least that's the way I see it, the New York Film Festival. It's the greatest films from around the world. I don't know if you intend to change that orientation, whether you will lean toward world premieres, Eugene. I guess maybe I can get off my soapbox for a second and just ask you that question. Do you have any intention of doing that?
We don't really think about it in that way. We just don't think about movies through that. We don't see films through that lens. We don't think about what to show from that perspective. It's just we've had world premieres. We opened the festival last year with the world premiere of The Irishman, but it's just not it's so not the way we start a conversation with a filmmaker or with a producer or even with a studio about whether to show a movie or not.
My God, I'm coming off as such a Philistine here. Anyway, I mean, I think the virtual component is going to be here to stay. You know, my job is to optimize films and get them out into commerce and to stay in business as well at the same time. So I'm very sympathetic to the films that play film festivals that are worthy films, but that don't fit into the programming scheme of platforms or of all rights distributors. And I think we do need to find a way to get those films seen, because there are some great films that are suffering and not getting out into the world. And I have a feeling that everyone in this group and a lot of people watching are thinking about that and coming up with ideas. And I think Tom touched on that in his article as well. So no, I mean, I think the virtual component, I think we will emerge from this pandemic with the virtual component an enhanced part of virtually every festival. I actually believe that. All right, I'm going to go to some questions here. And I like this question because of the way it starts. This is from Carmine DeMauro. And it starts by saying, "This is amazing. Thanks to the panelists." I don't know that I need to even continue. Do any of you see additional categories coming to your festivals with new formats of storytelling coming out every day. When will there be an interactive category, for example? I mean, I think, I suspect Tabitha would say it's been happening, but is this moment going to create an opportunity to change programming orientations? I mean, I know I asked that questions in another way, but different kinds of storytelling, maybe interactive, or obviously there might be so you can answer that question. I also want to ask about documentaries because I'm very keen on documentaries, and obviously you are too, Tabitha. That's what you come from. So I don't know if you want to answer that question, Carlo, or just a general. Is your orientation toward documentaries in the Berlinale changing at all?
Well, let me say first that I am against category because I like the fact that by using one single word, film, I can include very different objects. And I consider myself lucky because in both places where I worked, Berlin and Locarno, I could select in every section different kind of films with different languages, both documentary, fiction, hybrid, essay. Last year at the Berlinale in competition, we had an essay, documentary. So for me, I'm always interested in the how cinema expands its language. I tried it. My goal is to try to bring this experimentation within the big umbrella of the festival. We open up a new section called Encounters, precisely to have a room which is less heavy than the main competition for this kind of object. Then, of course, when it comes to tools that need, to films that need specific tools, you need maybe a specific infrastructure, and that is also a matter of budget. But yes, I'm very open to that.
And so Tabitha, with your background in documentary, do you expect any? I mean, the great thing about Sundance is that, in my opinion, documentaries have always been on an equal footing with narratives, and I don't know, frankly, of any other festival that plays both where that's the case. Do you think there's going to be, you influence the existence of documentaries at Sundance in any way by this new role?
I did. Like Carlo, that's probably not the question I'd ask, but it's certainly, I appreciate you saying that about Sundance, John, because that is one of the reasons that it's so exciting to have a part in this festival, because there is such a tradition of documentaries. The thing we need to do, to your earlier question, is to try and get rid of that word narrative for fiction films, as though documentaries don't have narratives. So I think that what Carlo said reminded me of, it was almost like a thought experiment when I was thinking about the festival, and what if we didn't have any categories and we just said, we generally play 120 features, we're going to choose 120 things that we want people to see because they're amazing. How would that feel? There's a part of me that would really love that world. The other part of me, which has seen how documentaries fare when you don't create a place for them at the heart of things, is that they tend to be, oh yes, we had 2 documentaries in competition. Well, I want to make sure that we are showing as much nonfiction work as we possibly can, and a range of nonfiction work that expresses the complexity of form, which is trying to address the complexity of the world. So there's that aspiration. And then, as you say, John, our New Frontier section, which has been an amazing kind of curatorial endeavor led by Shari Frilo, about new forms of storytelling where technology and story and art meet, right on the bleeding edge of it. That has brought many forms to the mountain. We also show indie episodic pilots for episodic work that have not been bought. And of course, we show short. So one of the things that we want to preserve as we see more films coming in pre-owned, is the possibility of discovery for audiences and for us, where are the next new voices coming from? So I think feature films will always be at the heart of what we do, but we do need, for me, I'm very interested in where those emerging voices are coming from. And it's not possible to emerge with a feature film for most people. So we need to be Catholic in our taste about what the context is around these features.
I mean, it's an interesting, what you're saying is extremely interesting to me. And it's interesting that there's been at least a perceived shift on my part at Sundance in terms of the commerciality of films. Some of the biggest sales this year were documentaries. I mean, that would have been completely unheard of 10 years ago. And I think people have come to realize that, documentaries are as entertaining and as narrative as scripted films. The notion of combining them and not making, those kind of arbitrary delineations, to me, is kind of fascinating. I wonder if that's, do you, Carlo, have you played, I should know the answer to this. Are you open to playing documentaries in competition?
Yeah, as I said, we had one this year. We had a documentary essay by Riti Pan in competition. Of course, I am open to that. The festival in Europe, probably because they are older, they have like this big centerpiece, which is the competition. And usually competition is reserved to feature films. But to me, a film is a film, documentary, essay, hybrid. I mean, we had an amazing, we show an amazing project, and a part of it was in competition. The project is called DAO and is now online. And I really, that was like also forcing the rule, because that project was already shown in France as an installation. But for me, it worked also as a film. So I decided to have it in competition. So I have the freedom to put whatever I feel like, and hopefully that in the end could work in competition.
If you had to sort of have a crystal ball of the future, do you see more documentaries making up the competition in the future as things go forward?
Yes, well, I'll answer for Carlo. Yes, he does. Yes.
I believe that the language of cinema is going more towards an hybridation of form. So what we call documentary nowadays is much wider, or what we call fiction the same way. So that's the field I'm interested in more, where documentary use the technique of fiction to express a reality and the other way around. And yeah, I'm very much interested in that.
Yeah, and as I just noticed that Dave Wilson said that someone should start a festival that explores the interaction between fiction and nonfiction. I think I'll take credit for having that idea. So here's a question for you all. If you had to point to a festival other than each other's or your own that deserves to have a light shone on it, what would that festival be?
It was, I'm just going to interrupt really, because it would be True False. Actually, True False as an experience of expansive thinking around that beautiful, fuzzy, oblique stroke between true and false, between fiction and nonfiction is wonderful. And the community that David and Paul tapped into and then enlarged, to go to Columbia, Missouri, and have amazing audiences willing to be challenged with the kinds of work that they see, the fun that is there, also the rigor and the taste. True False, love it. Shine a light on that.
Columbia, Missouri. I spent a week there one night. Just kidding, little joke. All right, Eugene, if you had to, you've been to a lot of festivals. What festival deserves to have a light shown on it?
Yeah, I have been to a lot. The immediate answer I thought of when you were as you were asking the question True False, and so that for sure. And it's not just because of the films, and that's a big part of it, but I think you're exactly right, Tabitha. There's something about the experience. What I think True False does well, beyond just showing cool films in a cool place with cool audiences, is buskers playing music before every screening. That there's just something about the whole experience of traveling to a place where so much is being sort of considered, and you're having more than just I don't know, documentaries can be heavy, documentaries can be serious sometimes. That's a festival that also makes the experience fun. I don't know, that's the one that comes to mind off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of another. There's so many.
I'll let you off the hook, Carlo, and it can't be Locarno.
No. But I will stay in Europe. I will suggest a trip to Europe whenever it's gonna be possible. There is a festival that I like very much. It takes place in a very nice town, Vienna. The festival is called Berlinale, and they work a lot on. They don't have any competition, so as you can call it a festival or a festival that mix established filmmaker with totally obscure films. And I like that freedom a lot. Plus, it's directed by a friend of mine, Italian lady, Eva. So,
John, shout out to the Morelia Festival in Mexico. That's a festival that I'm thinking about as I'm sitting here. Also, as just like
never been to it. I go to it for sure.
Highly recommend.
The Berlinale in Vienna. We shot before sunrise in Vienna. After Dieter Koslick refused to give us money from North Rhineland-Westphalia. So we went to Vienna. I don't mean to I'm not ganging up on Dieter. That's not fair. I love Dieter. But and we went to the Berlinale, and it was brilliant. So that's a good shout out.
Oh, that, and Ash just shouted out Black Star, which I have never got to. And every time I look at their lineup of talks and films, every time people talk to me about it, it's like, I got to get there. Yeah, Black Star.
Yeah. All right. I think, unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. I cannot thank you guys enough for doing this. You're very generous and candid and brilliant.
you're a great host.
This was amazing, and I've been all this whole talk, which went super fast.
Yeah.
Meaning to congratulate Eugene on your backdrop game. How many hours did you spend putting the lamps in the perfect position behind your intellectual black turtleneck? It's just such a good look.
I wish I could take credit for it. It's not my house, but it's been a wonderful place to shelter for the last few weeks.
I've always wanted to know your stylist. Carlo, I know now you're so wound up, you're not going to be able to sleep all night. I apologize about that.
I'm gonna watch a couple of films. It's not
very good.
As is your want. Okay, I want to thank you all. I want to thank everyone at Cinetic, Marcus Holzberg, Steve Farneth, whose idea this was, Ross Freemer, and everyone. I want to thank my life partner, Bronwyn, who happens to have a great podcast, Different Tweed, and my wonderful kids, and the people at NPRM who've done a solid by us. And I just want to say that we'll be back in 2 weeks, where our guests will be Lori Loughlin and Massimo Giannulli. Sorry, I just had to do that. Okay, I will see you all later. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.